Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And I have to tell you, I am so excited to talk to my guest today. And I know I always say that, but I'm always real excited. But when I was reading about what we're going to be discussing today, I'm like, oh, that's me. I need help. Oh, that's me. I need help. So I was just so looking forward to this conversation that I'm going to have with Marcey Rader today. So welcome, Marcey. Welcome to our program.
Thank you. I am delighted to be one of your over 1,000 guests.
Well, we have had some duplicates, but we're probably close to 1,000. But yeah, so as I was mentioning, you have an absolutely fascinating history, subject matter that you talk about. And so let me tell people a little bit more about you, and then we'll jump into this. So Marcey Rader is a multi-award-winning speaker, consultant, coach, and author who helps individuals and teams reclaim their workdays with health-powered productivity. I love that part. As the founder of RaderCo, she works with companies to reduce burnout through sustainable habits. She is a TEDx speaker, of course, and one of only 900 certified speaking professionals globally. Her books include Work Well, Play More, and her latest book is Reclaim Your Workday, a guide to excel in the modern workplace. Marcey's energy doesn't slow down off stage. When she's not watching her husband perform as a professional drummer, she's doing walking meetings, sipping iced coffee, or jumping rope where she lives in Raleigh, North Carolina. So again, Marcey, welcome.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you.
Well, I always like to know how it is that my guests got to where they are today. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes. Excuse me. I had a crooked path. My undergrad and master's degree was in exercise science and wellness.
Okay.
And that is where the health piece comes in and well-being. But I only worked in that field for a few years and ended up working in the clinical research industry in pharma and biotech for 14 years. I traveled up to 48 weeks a year for almost a decade and, moved up the ladder as high as I wanted to go and was managed clinical trials. Then I became a trainer and trained managers, trained new clinical research associates. And when I was training, that's when I realized this is something I'm good at. I'm good at standing in front of people, conveying information. It brings me a lot of energy. And because I traveled so much throughout my 30s, I was away from home a lot. And there was one episode where I was gone for about 3 weeks and I saw my husband for about 2.5 days.
Oh.
And when I saw him coming towards me at the airport with this, he was coming to visit me where I was. When I saw the look on his face, it was just like I knew I had to stop what I was doing.
Yes, you needed off that hamster wheel.
Yes, and I had to find something else. And the next day, we're walking on the beach, and I said, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm quitting my job, and within the year. And it was that next day that I was training the group that I was working with on things like email management, how to manage your time, your attention, your calendar, how to be healthy on the road, all of these things. And this was the training that most people said was their favorite training of all of them that I did. And that was my own personal training. And I thought, could I make a business?
Yes.
So I was the primary earner, and I gave myself 6 months. I started saving money. I called it my freedom fund. I quit my job on July 13th, 13 years ago this year. And at first, I just focused on business travelers because that's what I was.
Right.
And
those
that
were
made
your
sense.
people.
Yes. And I wrote 2 books about business travel and being healthy and productive on the road. And then things just shifted for me. And I really don't, I mean, if people happen to be business travelers, I work with them. But the business has shifted so much in the last 12 years. What we primarily do now is work with individuals and teams, mostly in the biotech pharma space or accounting and finance space. But really, any company has issues with their email and chat communication, having effective meetings, managing their attention and focus. Remote work is a specialty of ours. I've worked remote since 2002. I've managed teams of up to 18 people globally. And so when COVID hit, we had more work than we could handle. But working with individuals and teams, coaching their employees, consulting on policies like our meeting policy or our time off policy, doing keynotes at conferences and for company events, and then training as well. And I have a team of subject matter experts in different areas beyond productivity. But the health-powered productivity piece is what sets us apart.
Yes.
Because to me, it does not matter how many boxes you check off your to-do list if you are losing sleep to do it. And it doesn't matter how many emails you are answering if you are doing it at dinner with your family. And we are not robots. We don't just plug in and plug out or unplug. And so if a company just wants more output, we are not the right fit for them. If they care about their employees' well-being and really mean it, then we are the right fit for them.
Right. Yeah, because your mental and physical health are what's most important. And when those are might not be at their peak, but when those are good, then you're going to be more productive with getting your work done. And I think that's one of the things, because companies are like, well, why should we even care about that? Well, do you want to get better work from your employees?
Yeah,
that's really what it comes down to.
And even if you did just, care about the bottom line, you're going to get a better bottom line.
Yes.
If your employees are happier and also healthier. I just was tagged in a post from Bayer Pharmaceuticals, Bayer, and they actually had posted something on LinkedIn and also, or sent it out to their employees. I'm not sure which one, but it said, take a break before you hit exhaustion. I'm paraphrasing, but take a break before you hit exhaustion. Don't wait until you get there.
Right.
Take a break. And I was so glad to see this major company promoting taking breaks.
Right.
Because so many of the companies that I work with, they're working through lunch, and I work with several startups. And I feel like there's still this romanticization and with startups of that we have to just burn the candle at both ends. We can't have process. We can't have breaks. We can't have this. We just have to go and sleep in the office or work at night. And it doesn't have to be that way. And you're also not at your most creative.
Right.
When you are tired.
Right. Well, and then of course that spills over, because when you get home, you're too exhausted to walk the dog, play with the kids, have a conversation. You're falling asleep in your chair, all of those various things. And so, yeah, it's so beneficial for everyone. But it's funny because as you were saying that, I remember years ago when I actually worked still in corporate America, I worked for an insurance company, and they were big on you take breaks. Now, not a lot, but I was like, but I don't like that, because when I had to stop my train of thought and then start it again, I found that I was less productive. Now, I'm sure that was just a myth that I was telling myself, right? But I also always made sure that I took lunch. I mean, and that to me was even if I was still sitting at my desk, I was not doing work. And so I'd sit and I'd read a book, or play games on the computer, do something, but I was taking that break. But I think the hardest part is, and we've all probably had this, we had the boss who didn't take breaks. So then we felt, if they're not taking breaks, I can't take breaks either. And even if they said, hey, it's important for you to take breaks. And so why is it so important that the higher ups model the behavior for us?
What you just said, there's so many different directions we could go with what you said. I wanted to
squirrel.
I want to touch on all of them. But with the manager, what I tell people is, if you are in a position of authority, it does not matter how many times you say, I work at night, or if I send you an email at night or on the weekend, I don't expect you to answer it. People will feel compelled if they know that you do that. If you are saying, take your break, but you are not, you are modeling the behavior, and they are going to maybe be nervous about taking a break, or think that they won't be promoted if they
are they watching me?
Are they watching me? If you go on vacation as a manager or a leader and you're responding to emails, they will feel compelled to also do that on their vacation. So it is really important that you model the behavior that you are, you're not a parent. It's not one of those do as I say, not as I do.
Right.
You need to model that behavior. Now, what you said about that you sometimes felt like you didn't want to stop.
Right.
You were in a train of thought.
I'm on a whatever.
If you're in the zone, don't. But most people are not in a zone anymore, because we're interrupted so much by chats and emails and things like that, that most people go throughout their day and they're not even in a deep work state.
Right.
When you were working in corporate, we didn't have as much coming at us. So you probably could easily get into that deep work state. But there are studies that show that, about 50 minutes is about the max amount, or about like ideal time to then take a break. 90 minutes is about a maximum amount of time before people lose productivity. But it really depends on what you're doing and your job.
Right.
Like my husband's in the creative field, and he 2 or 3 hours with him making music, and he doesn't even realize it. But if it's something that, maybe is very taxing for you, or like
something you don't like to do,
then, setting a timer and making yourself step away is really important. The other thing that you mentioned was lunch. And this is not a judgment. And I will say that until I was probably in my late 30s, I ate almost every meal in front of a screen. That's how we grew up. Never used our kitchen table. And I've since, my rule for myself is one meal only in front of a screen at most a day. And that might even just be a snack. And a lot of times that's my breakfast, but it's because my breakfast is a smoothie. And that's kind of weird to just sit at a table and drink a smoothie. But your lunch is so important to step away, because if you've been working 3, 4, 5 hours, your battery is draining. It's drained. You have to recharge that battery. And it's not going to happen by staring at the screen.
Or staying sedentary in that chair.
Yes. Even better, like this would be, ideally you go outside and have your lunch, or you have it with someone else in real life,
right.
or you just go somewhere else. It's quiet. Like I work from home, so I go to my deck if I can, or my screen and porch, or I sit at the table. But I always
that change of scenery.
Yes. I try to, and I say try because in the winter I don't do this. But or in the very heat of the
where it's
summer.
really hot.
In North Carolina at noon. I will go for a walk in my neighborhood, but even if it's just around my block, it's 7 minutes.
Right.
But that's still, getting me outside. And there's something called the cathedral effect, Deb, that when we are outside, especially outside, but or even in a room with big ceilings, we're more creative. And if we are in an enclosed area, like a little work phone booth, like they have at some offices, then we're more like focused on the task at hand. So if you're trying to solve a problem, you actually want to get away from your desk and go outside if you can, because then you're more likely to find that solution.
Right. Now, what about the people who take those walks, but they're listening to a podcast? They're listening to the Business Power Hour.
To the Business Power Hour. Yes.
But is that giving enough of a break from thinking about business, or should you be listening to, the latest John Grisham?
Yeah. It's funny that you asked me this question, because I am number one learner in Clifton's Strengths Finders. So if you're familiar with that. So number one learner. So I am always like in a course, I'm listening to podcasts, reading books, and so on. And this year, I actually resolved to read less and listen to less, because I always had an headphones on, listening to something. And I realized that I wasn't just thinking.
Okay.
And I have a meditation practice, but there's also, think-a-tate, just letting ourselves think.
Right.
And I wasn't doing that enough. So now I kind of alternate between different things, like at certain points I might just walk and listen to a podcast, or clean my house and just have music on. I'm trying to actually listen to more music.
Right.
I found that I love music, and what I was doing was just listening to podcasts or books all the time. And I have a podcast too, Deb. So I know it's like I'm telling people not to listen. But it's more like, in my practice, if I'm out walking and I'm listening to your podcast and it's over, then I will finish my walk in just silence, and not immediately go to the next one. But I do think that even if, like your question about, is that enough of a break? Because I'm still thinking about business. Listening to someone else like that is inspiring. Like somebody could be listening to your podcast and it is kind of a break because they're not thinking about their own stuff.
Okay.
And like you had one of your podcast episodes had a consultant on, and she was talking about, making her business, or starting her consulting business. And she used a Chat GPT prompt, and I was like, oh, I'm going to do that when I get back.
Yes.
So it gave me a new idea, a fresh idea. And so it's more just get away from your desk. Yeah.
Right. Right. And of course, we know that we need fresh air and we need sunshine. It's interesting. When I still was in corporate America, I mean, we were in downtown Denver, but you could still walk around the block. And there was actually a park across the street, and so you could go over there. But it was just getting out. And even if and you kind of have this as one of the tips, even if we had people that we were working with and we were still talking about business, so maybe we're having a walking meeting, which is one of the things that you recommend. But we were still getting out. We were having that change of scenery, and just it really is surprising, especially if you've been stuck, getting out and changing, doing whatever, that frees your brain up to go, aha.
Yeah. Well, and there is a study that showed that creativity increased by up to 60% when people were walking, even on a treadmill, staring at a blank wall. And, with walking meetings, and I am a big fan of walking meetings. I've done up to 6 or 7 in a week.
Wow.
If I included phone, it might even be more than that. But when you're walking side by side, like if it's a manager and a direct report, it reduces the real or perceived hierarchy.
Right. You're not staring at somebody who might be taller than you or whatever.
Exactly. And so it's a more open and honest conversation, and people can be more relaxed. And so I'm a big fan. And because you have so many, small business owners listening to your podcast, there's a lot of networking involved. Have a small business, depending on the type of business that you have. And when I first started my business 12 years ago, what I did before, I never had to network, and I never had to get business, like it would just, I was just, here's what you need to do type of thing. And I really set myself apart by inviting people to walk with me instead of another coffee. And I love coffee, but I could only drink so much coffee in a day. And the people that said like, oh, interesting. Okay. They loved it. And it's really become what I'm known for. And I just had someone text me yesterday and say, can you put me on the calendar, for the next walk? And I have a few places that I do it at. And, but it is a way to stand apart from the other businesses and be creative and also just get some movement in.
Right. And it's funny because we spend a lot of time just sitting. And we've all seen and heard the studies about how sitting is now one of the biggest health issues. And it's funny because I have, one of the fancy smartsy watches that every hour goes time to stand. And I'm like, yeah, whatever.
And you don't, yeah.
I don't even pay any attention to it, because it's really funny. It has a different ding and vibrate on my arm. So my brain recognizes, oh, that's what it is. So I don't even have to look at it. I can just completely ignore it, right? It's not, oh, there's a text or there's something like that. But yeah, even just getting up and walking around to, and maybe that's, and, here's one of the things, drink more liquids, folks, right? We all need our fluids, whether it's your iced coffee or whatever, because you're going to have to get up and move around.
Yes. Yes. Oh, that's such a great point. Yes. Yeah.
Right. And of course we all need more fluids. Nobody drinks as much water as they're supposed to, or iced coffee. But yeah, it's just kind of one of those things. And so, yeah, you're either getting up to get more or to get rid of.
Yes.
Right. Well, let's talk about one of the big things that I think we all think we're good at, and none of us are good at it. And that's multitasking. I am definitely one of those people that, I can do, okay, oh yeah. And then of course, what happens is I don't do any of it well because my brain has not focused on whatever it was at hand, or worse, I forget what I was doing before and never get back to it. Or by the time I'm back to it, it's like, ugh, I have to start over. So why do we think that multitasking is such a good thing, and how in the heck do we get rid of that?
Yeah. Well, I think especially I would say the 90s, we wore it like a badge.
Right. Yes. I'm a multitasker.
Yes. And it was even a bullet and job and position.
Right. Yeah. Must be able to multitask.
Yeah, must be able to multitask. And now, if you have that, you're basically saying that we're a company that wants you to take longer to do whatever it is that you're going to do and make more mistakes. And multitasking, that term was created for computers,
right?
Not for people,
right? Yeah, because a computer can be doing multiple things at one time.
Yes, and we cannot. So there's different types of different types of tasking. We tend to use this umbrella term of multitasking, but there is background tasking, which is like listening to a podcast while I walk. Totally fine. And actually, sometimes, I'll say to do phone meetings, do walking meetings, because you might actually pay more attention out walking and listening on the phone than if you were in front of your computer.
Right.
If you're in front of your computer, you might want
it goes ding. We're like, oh,
exactly.
Pavlov's dog, right?
Right. So that's background tasking. Hypertasking is doing two things at once that could be considered dangerous, like driving while also texting. Or
right.
And what we're doing most of the time that we call multitasking is we're doing task switching or switch tasking, where we go back and forth between email, chat, slide, doing
squirrel.
This and that. Yeah, doing it all. Squirrel, yes. And that is where we are always losing time in the switch. And if you think about like driving driving on the highway. If I'm driving from Raleigh to Atlanta, where you are, and, I leave at 4 a.m, I can be going down the highway, 70, 75 miles per hour. I'm in the zone. I'm getting great gas mileage. Don't even know how I got from point A to point B.
Right.
If you compare that to rush hour, I may never get up to 70. I go to 30, 40, slow to 30, 40, 50, stop. Creep along. My gas mileage is terrible. I'm stressed. I'm tired. It takes me longer to get there.
Right.
That is our brain when we are doing all of this task switching. It also makes us feel like, if you've ever gotten that feeling at the end of your day, like, I worked all day and I don't know what I did.
Yeah.
Yes. And when I ask people that question, and when I'm, doing keynotes, like, most of the room raises their hand and like, this is my everyday. And it's because we're switching back and forth so much that our brain never gets to check the box that we finished anything.
Right.
We don't finish what we've started. I mean, we don't even respond to an email without stopping in the middle of the email and reading the pop-up. So, none of us are good at it. We think that we are. And I will also argue, women like to say they're better at it. We're just less bad.
Right.
Say it that way. We're just less bad.
That's when we find the car keys in the refrigerator.
Right. Yes, Deb. But the interesting thing about the study that was pulled from about women are better at multitasking, the gentleman that did that first study, he actually said, no, these results were never, they were never supposed to be interpreted this way. It was just like a couple people saw it incorrectly and just ran with it, and it won't die. That myth won't die. We are just not good at it because it's going through the same cognitive channel. You can't read words on a screen and listen to another conversation.
Right.
Because they're going through the same channel.
Right. And you talk a lot in your trainings and seminars and then your books about how we get away from that. And of course, one of the biggest, we've kind of alluded to it, is that, we're paying attention to every time we hear that bing, that phone, that pop-up. And I have my phone in front of me because it's my timer, right? So that I can do this. But what I do is I put it on do not disturb, because then the pop-ups stop. Because even if it's just that I'm glancing at it, I've missed a word that you said, or, something like that. And now, folks, there's always somebody who says, but there's an emergency. Okay, if there's truly something that's going on, you can do that. But it's very interesting. One of the things that they have done here in the big school district that I'm near is banning cell phones for, and I found this interesting for elementary. And I think junior high school kids can still have their cell phones. And I would have thought that would have been a bigger issue. But they are finding that by having the kids put their phone in these, little lock boxes or wherever, they're focusing on what they're doing. They're learning better. There's, all sorts of things. And yes, if there's an emergency, then you call the principal's office. I mean, whatever it is, because when I went to school very long time ago, we didn't have cell phones and we still survived, obviously. And like I was at an all-day meeting last week. It was all day. It is an 8-hour meeting. Now we did take lots of good breaks and they made you get up and walk around and things like that. But I still had my phone there, but I turned it upside down. So that way I wasn't glancing at it to see what was going on. And but I saw other people, responding to texts, responding to things, and then they'd look up and go, where am I? What planet are we on? So it is so easy to take away those distractions and realize that the world doesn't come to an end. We can go an hour without checking Facebook or our emails or whatever. And so how do you really get that across to people? And again, it's kind of the modeling thing, right? If the boss puts the phone where the boss, can't see it or whatever. But, how do you really convince people that they need to maybe not focus, but eliminate the distractions?
Yeah. So before I answer that, I have to say, because you brought up the kids and phones, Wirecutter has a podcast episode on how to introduce your kids to their first cell phone. That is excellent. Excellent. So that's just for your audience out there. So removing distractions is one of the first things that any of our coaches do with people when we're working with them. And what most people, when we first got our, got email, you and me, Deb, and for anybody that's first got their phone or whatever, just notifications were on, and that's just become how they are. But the notifications being on as the default is not on to help us be more productive. They are on to get us to use the tool or app more.
Yeah, Microsoft wants us to use Microsoft more, so it's going to go ding at you.
Exactly. And every time we get one of those ring, pings, buzzes, haptics on our wrist, we get this little dopamine response, the same one that you get with a slot machine, from gambling. And our brain likes it and it wants more of it. It's this anticipation. We want more, we want more. And our body just gets used to it. And so removing those, like turning off as many notifications as you can. One thing, like I do not have email notifications. Why? Because I'm not going to forget to check my email.
Right. It's still going to be there.
Still going to be there. And, we teach people if we are reactive or we are responsive.
Yes.
I cannot recall anyone ever telling me that I have not responded quickly enough. And typically it's usually within 24 hours.
Right.
I mean, it's often way less than that, but I have not trained people that I'm just sitting in my inbox. And there are people that I work with, like my attorney or my accountant or different people, that when they respond to me immediately, it actually worries me.
Right.
One, that they don't have enough business.
Yeah. Why are they just paying?
And they're just sitting there. And two, that, if they're doing that consistently all the time, that they're never really focused.
Right.
And I want my accountant to be out of the inbox when he's doing my taxes, and so on. So, one of the questions I ask in workshops is like, how many how many devices do you have just your email coming in on?
Right.
And some people will say 5.
Yeah.
You have a work phone, a personal phone, a laptop, a watch, a phone. Well, it's not efficient or effective on your watch. I don't even do email on my phone. So like at least remove the notifications from, the devices that aren't efficient for you to respond.
And you can set the levels. Like on text messages, so my clients text me. That's just what they do. And that's what we have set up. But it's never you need to respond right away. So I've turned off the notifications, and then I'll look later and go, oh, okay, there's this and this. But I have told them, if it is urgent, then you need to call. Otherwise, it will be later. And I just know, okay, if it's a phone call, yikes, there's something that I need to pay more close attention to.
Yeah, Deb, I'm glad you brought that up, because in the book, I talk about a communication matrix. And that every team and company needs to have this, where, if it's this, then that. If it's this, it's an email. If it's that, it's a text message. If it's this, then call me. If it's this, then Slack or Microsoft Teams.
Right.
And be very clear on the channels to use. One thing, I try to get managers away from is sending tasks or to-dos throughout every channel. Like, and I'll have people complain to me and say, my manager will send me, they'll text me something to do, and then they'll, email me something to do, and they'll Teams me something to do. And they're like, it's everywhere. And I just want it to be in one place. And text is the worst place to ask somebody to do something, because you text them again, and it gets lost.
It just shoves it.
Yeah. So having some kind of communication matrix, and I actually have a couple of samples and the bonus resources that they can even just copy and paste and fill in the blank.
I love it. And it is about setting those boundaries. When I started my business, my clients, hey, this is great, we love this, but they also thought, ooh, she's now available 24/7. And, and so what I told them was, here are my office hours, 8 to 5, 9 to 5, whatever it was. And I said, you can obviously communicate with me outside those hours, but I will not respond. And of course, that's the trick, right? Because you respond once, then they're like,
you've taught them. Yeah.
Yes. And so, but what really got them and got their attention was, I said, I'm more than happy to do your work evenings, weekends, holidays, but it will cost you double. And that they're like, no, it can, and so if somebody is communicating with me an evening, a week, then it usually is, okay, I need to pay a little bit more attention to this, but I still might look at it and go, nope, that's waiting till tomorrow. That's waiting till Monday, whatever it is, because, it's, I love my clients dearly, but they are like little kids. And if you tell them, if you say no cookie, no cookie, no cookie, and then you give them a cookie, they're like, I want a cookie every time.
Yeah. Yeah. And, with the texting, I'm so glad that Apple finally came out with the send later feature for text. I wish it would also work with Android, that I could send later to somebody that has an Android device. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way yet. But, if I, like just this morning, I wrote 3 texts, but I scheduled them to send at 4 because I don't want the conversation back to me. At 4 o'clock or later, we can have a text exchange and I'm fine. But also, I don't want to interrupt them.
Right.
Not urgent. I want to get it out of my head. So you can also think about, like, scheduling even just your texts so that you don't have the conversation except for when you're available to have it.
And you just mentioned something that I absolutely love. We need to be thinking about the recipients also. Are they thinking, oh my gosh, this is a message from Deb, I absolutely have to pay attention to it?
Yeah.
and even if we, and you mentioned it before, even if we put in there, no rush, this can wait. No, because we also know if I don't respond right away, I shall forget.
Yes.
And one of the things that I have learned, and I don't know if it's an age thing or what, is, and I've always been a kid that's easily distracted. It said that on my report cards when I was little, and it talks too much and easily distracted, right? And so if something pops into my brain, I need to do, I write it down, and then I go back to whatever it was that I was doing. So I had that momentary thing, but rather than actually going and doing it, but I did find I have to write it down, and I do have to write more than one or two words, because I'll look at it and go, what do you suppose that meant? And so I do, I put a little bit more in there, but and then of course you can check it off, right? Because our brains like those things.
Yes.
But yeah, so I'm not giving in to that temptation of, I need to go look up whatever, or do whatever. But I've got the reminder there, so when I am able to, I can go back to it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, my husband just had this conversation with one of his students yesterday, who said that they didn't like to write things down. And your brain, why work your brain that hard? Just write it down. Don't try to remember everything. Yes. But one thing I want to just go back to with the tasks and all the different places. So in the book, I divided the chapters into meetings, task management, email and chat tool, time off, and so on. And within each chapter, I have levels for the individual, the manager, and the C-suite or business owner. And one thing that I feel very strongly about is that companies will never get out of that email or chat hell if they don't have some kind of project management system.
Right.
And, because you would eliminate so many emails and chats just by having a project management system. I never have to ask about status updates,
right?
Because I just go to there. I just go there. I don't have to worry about when I put tasks into comments we use ClickUp. I don't have to worry about that. Even if I choose to work on a Saturday morning or at night or something like that, because that is something very specific and not somebody's inbox. And so, implementing some kind of project management system or task management system is just a game changer if you are feeling communication overload from all of the rings, pings, and buzzes.
Right. I love it. And it is about being organized. And there are, some of us just are not gifted at that. But I also find that when I develop those habits, then it does become, more routine, where I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Years ago, one of the things that I was at a Mary Kay demonstration. I don't even know if they do those anymore, but they would say, do something for 21 straight days. Then it becomes a habit. And once it's a habit, your brain goes, yeah, I have to do this. And whether it's washing your face or, waiting till noon to check your emails, whatever it is, develop those habits and break the ones that really aren't, we have the habit of phone buzzes, pick it up, right? It's not a crying baby, and even crying babies can be left to cry for a little bit. It's okay to let it go.
Couple of things there. So first, the picking up the phone, that is often a compulsion.
Right.
We were just at a concert on Friday night, and the woman next to me kept looking at her phone, and I was seeing what she was doing.
Right.
She was scrolling through the news feed. She never clicked on anything. Every once in a while, she'd look at a text or something. But the concert was happening.
Right. So it distracted you.
Yeah. And yes, it distracted me, which I didn't like. But also, I just kept thinking, you paid so much money
Why?
You can look at your news feed after the concert.
Right.
It's just a compulsion.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is about the 21 days.
Mm-hmm.
So that is actually another myth.
Mm-hmm.
So 21, there's nothing.
Mary Kay was wrong. Oh,
I'm sorry, but Mary Kay got it from a study that was published.
mm-hmm.
But but that study wasn't like all habits,
Mm-hmm.
because it depends on how long that we've already
Mm-hmm.
had our current habit,
Mm-hmm.
if it's ingrained
Mm-hmm.
in us, and how complex that behavior is. So if it's something that we just started doing, like
Mm-hmm.
say, like I go to bed pretty early, between 9 and
Mm-hmm.
9:30 usually, and I don't mess around on my phone when I get in bed. But let's say I did for a few nights.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then, and I decide I don't like doing this, I don't want this to be a habit, then I could break that pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But if I had been doing that for the last 4 years, where I scroll on my phone in bed,
Mm-hmm.
and
You're going to get twitchy fingers.
yeah, then it might take much longer for me to break that habit. If you are somebody who grew up, as sugar as a food group, right? Then to say like, I'm going to go no sugar for the next, 3 months or whatever, it may be much more challenging because it's ingrained in your behaviors. So I say that because sometimes people have, when people try to change their behavior or create a habit, if they don't succeed in 21 days, they feel like they're a failure. But, or it comes to January 21st and they're a failure because they haven't done it, enough times or whatever. But if you did it 14 more times than you did the previous, month or two, and you still improved incrementally, right? And so, thinking through, what the behavior is that you want and that outcome, but also not, having a clear plan for if you don't achieve that as well, like, because it's not necessarily a failure. And some habits, well, any kind of behavior change is an experiment, but we might think that a habit will be good for us when actually it's not. And so one example I give is somebody that says, I'm going to get up every morning at 5:30 and exercise. Well, one, if you're not a morning person, like my husband doesn't go to bed till 12 or 12:30, he would have a hard time going to sleep. He would probably need to drink a lot more coffee and caffeine throughout the day. And, maybe he would have to go to bed earlier and he would miss, like, maybe that's the only time that you have with your spouse. And so then you have to go to bed earlier and now you miss the time with your spouse. But you wouldn't know until you experimented with 5:30 of these things. So then if you choose, like, actually, this isn't
working.
Yeah. It's okay. It's not a failure. It's an experiment.
And I think that's where we get caught up, because the gurus will tell us you should be doing X. I am not a morning person. My husband is the morning person, and he, oh, bless him, he keeps saying, why don't you get up early and go walk the dogs with me? And it's like, because it's just, would it be good for me? Yes. Now we go for our walks later in the day. And once it gets hot here in Atlanta, then I may decide, okay, I am going to get up earlier because I don't like being this sweaty mess. But yeah, I'm going to be sluggish the rest of the day because of that. But if I also told him, I'm staying up till midnight, therefore you must stay up till midnight, that's not going to work either. And so, yeah, it is very personal, and none of it is a failure if it doesn't work out. Right.
There is, one of the concepts I teach is peak versus plummet hours. And we all have peak hours. I am definitely a morning person. I'm on fire in the morning. Don't mess with me in the morning. But I will start to plummet around 4 o'clock. Like I just really like to be done by 4 o'clock, or I'm just doing admin stuff. My husband, his peak hours are after I go to bed.
Right. But he is a professional drummer.
Yeah, which is good because I could not be. Like it would go against my natural chronobiology. But he's making music from like sometimes I know that he's just waiting for me to go to bed. Just
right.
like I know I have stuff I want to do, And so we also need to think about that with our employees. Now, not that we could have, for all jobs where you can work whenever your peak hours are, but you also maybe want to provide some flexibility. Like,
right.
Not everybody needs to work from 8 to 5.
Right.
Maybe
and we saw that during
6.
COVID when companies figured that out.
Yes, but companies are starting to return to the office more because of the recent government initiative.
And let's be honest, in person, we get to talk with people at the coffee maker. We get to pop into their office and say, hey, what about? I mean, and so there are distinct benefits to being in person. But, somebody got used to working 6 p.m. to midnight, and you make them come in at 7 a.m., their productivity is going to go down, and then it will affect everyone else.
Yes. It's funny you mentioned that. On the day that we're recording this, we released a podcast episode on the return to the office, but it's specific for managers. And that's one of the things that I mention in that is that we have to provide some kind of flexibility for office hours, because maybe people were used to taking walks at lunch or starting at 9, and now you're saying to be here at 7:30, and they have to actually, leave at 6:30 or 6:45 or something. And so really thinking about peak versus plummet hours.
Right.
But also, if you are in an office environment, if you're the morning person and you're there early, that person that comes in an hour after you or 2 hours after you, we cannot, and I say we, because I used to do this with my husband, cannot pounce on them because we've been working for 2 hours.
Give them a chance. They got to sit down and take their coat off.
Let them have and maybe, when I actually worked on a team at Biogen on this years ago, where people came in at a staggered schedule, and we said, everybody needs to have a 20-minute window from when they come in that people can't go to their desk. They can go to somebody else's, but they can't, they
don't bother Marcey in that first 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I think the other thing that we discovered during COVID was the length of time that somebody works is going to be very different. I was talking to somebody who said they could get done in 6 hours when they were working from home, what used to take them, 8 hours in the office. And of course, a big part of that was distractions and all of those things. But, but I also talked to managers who went, this is not right. Marcey's only working 6 hours. Yeah. Well, but Marcey was more productive during those 6 hours. And what were you going to make her do those other 2? Now, sometimes, obviously what they did was they assigned more tasks and things like that. But they, I think, we learned to be more flexible during COVID. And now we've got this whole weird, maybe this is not what we're supposed to do. And hybrid, I don't know. I mean, I was talking to one person who they said no matter where they were, the file they needed was in the other location. And so that always caused issues. But I think it did really show us that we can be much more flexible. Obviously, yes, there are jobs where you have to do whatever during, you're not going to make, dinner at McDonald's at 6 a.m. But all of those various things. So it's, and think about it for yourself too. And I think that is what's, something that we did learn from COVID is, how are we going to work better and more efficiently?
And it's actually, there's a word for what you were talking about with the managers. It's called productivity paradox.
Right.
Where they feel like they need to see the person working and they need to see the hours that the person is working. And it's not about hours, it's about outcome.
Right. Yeah. I always said that, the managers who were the real micro management, you had to be there under their little heads just went, right? Because they all tried that we're going to, manage your, record your keystrokes. I talked to people who said, I put my kids in front of my, because, and I'm like, and I told them, are they getting the work done? Well, yeah, but no. Yeah, maybe it was at 11 o'clock at night after everybody had gone to bed, and that was when they could focus and get it done. The important thing is, were they getting the work done? And I mean, there's certainly, I think what a lot of companies determined was, okay, you can work whenever, but we're going to have a Monday morning meeting that's required from 10 till 11 or whatever, so that everybody could still, do things like that. But, and of course, then when people discovered, oh, I can work at the beach or, wherever, are you getting the work done? I mean, that really is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Well, oh my gosh, Marcey, we didn't even talk about AI and how that is rapidly, rapidly changing things. I also wanted to talk about blocking time. You're only going to check emails at 4 p.m. and 10 a.m. or blocking days. So we didn't get to do any of that. So for those of you who just wondered what the heck I'm talking about with a design day, you have to read Marcey's book. But we definitely need to have you on again, because I think, especially with AI, things are changing, and they're changing very rapidly, in a good way. People who are afraid they're going to lose their job to AI, no, your job will change because of AI, but hopefully you're using the tools and things to be more productive. So we'll have you on again to talk more about that. But until then, if somebody's going, I'm so overwhelmed, Marcey, please help me. How do they find you, and what are the services that you provide?
Our website is helloraderco.com. You can also find me for keynotes at marceyrader.com. And then I am LinkedIn only. That is the only social media platform I'm on.
Good for you.
I also have videos on YouTube, but I am on LinkedIn and I'm active on there. And we provide consulting, training, and coaching services to businesses and individuals, as well as keynotes for conferences. And then the book that you mentioned, that was just released, is called Reclaim Your Workday, Sustainable Productivity Strategies for the New World of Work. And that's on Amazon. Also the audio's on Spotify, Audible, all of those, all of the main platforms.
I love it. And you can listen to it as you're doing your walks.
That's right. That's right.
I love it. Well, until we have you on again, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
That when you turn off notifications or you block your calendar, whatever it is that you do, don't think of it as barriers to your clients. Think of it as a guardrail, because guardrails keep us safe. When we're driving around mountains, we want guardrails there, right? And so a guardrail keeps your time, energy, focus, health, and relationships safe.
I love it. Well, I'm Deb Creer. I've been having so much fun talking with Marcey Rader of RaderCo. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.